have an extra 10 miles. I remember now what the video was about. So I was playing with my oldest boy here some chess last night. And actually, I was playing chess with both of them yesterday, and we were discussing lines of power. And I thought I would take the opportunity to talk about how the lines of power and generally the flow of energy could teach us about life and about positioning. And so this piggybacks on the discussion about eradicating evil inside of our lives. Because remember that if you're here and you're practicing some form of alchemy, whether it's externalized, you want to change your family, change your life, change your career, or internalized, you want to change your health, change your state of mind, change your spiritual, if you feel hollow inside, you don't have anything, and you're seeking. So that's all alchemy is. It's transforming lead into gold. In America we say, turning lemons into lemonade, right? That's all it is. So when we talk about, position, most of my patients are energy deficient, but a good number of them have energy, cannot get it where they want it to go. And some of them, because they have energy and cannot go where it wants to go, it actually causes them health problems. This is an interesting phenomenon because it teaches us that it is not just that we should let the body have energy and it will just move everything along. That is not true. There are cases where energy can become stuck. I've even seen teenagers, a certain muscle compartmentalized, usually associated with sport, and the muscle cannot let go of the fluids and let it flow out into the next compartment. This is because of environmental factors, emotional factors, stress, and of course with adults mostly, but it could be with teens, substance abuses. Now, the substance abuses can allow negative energies to influence and penetrate into even deeper layers. But if you give enough time and position to your stresses, your emotional stresses, thoughts that are unwanted, but you don't ever get them out, all of these things can eventually penetrate deeper and change the self. And by changing the self, you can end up in a dire predicament. I've heard of marriages and they say, oh, he changed, she changed, developed a gambling habit or whatever, this or that. This is because something got a foothold early on and then it wasn't dealt with. So in chess, how do we deal with these kinds of things? Well, the main way is if we cannot extend our power right away, let's say that we're on the passive side, right? Our queen's lined up on the left instead of on the right. Then we can immediately start by curbing the incursions of the outside. That's what our body does, right? Because when we're babies, we don't have any ability to defend ourselves at all. And so mothers and the immune system perform the act of protection for us. And so that's like moving the pawns forward and dissuading the opponent. And so we can do that as well in our life. We can position ourselves. For example, what is it that's said to, I believe it's Laertes, neither a borrower nor lender be. So his father is doing what? He's giving him advice of personal policies that will dissuade problems later on. And we can do that in general. I think the real problem is for some people holding to those personal policies, right? I'm not going to loan money to friends, but this time, and because I like this person a lot, but yet they don't realize that it absolutely will affect the friendship. And it doesn't really matter what it is, the personal policy is important. When I counsel people for addiction, I don't just put needles in them. They're hoping for magic, wand, and then they don't have an addiction, which is nonsense, right? Because the reality is I'm trying to get them addicted to their own internal chemistry, right? Their own chi. And you can't magic wand anyone anyways. So the main thing I like to tell them is, you need to empty your phone of all these phone numbers of these easy ways to get drugs and alcohol. Because one yin stirs all yins. So because one yin stirs all the yins, you can't even associate with those people anymore, those party people. And if they make one exception, I promise, just by hanging out with them, eventually someone will bring up the idea, I wish, for old time's sake, let's maybe smoke a J. Well, for that person, it might be just smoking a J, and then them feeling better that they're not alone because they're with their friend. But for this person, it could be life devastating. It could cost them their marriage, their job, their kids, their freedom. And this is very dangerous. So I even have a patient who has an ankle thing because he has such a substance abuse problem. The court assigned him an ankle bracelet to keep track of where he is because he is a flight risk. He's a risk to himself, he's a risk to his children, and he's a risk to his wife. So it's absolutely vital that he establish strength inside and push out against all the forces that are incurring in on him. And this is a life and death issue, right? My oldest son, his cousin, is only a couple days different. His father died because of drugs. And it's really sad because, the cousin now has no father to grow up around. What a shame, because the child represents the greatest possible thing that you can bring into the world. And for him to be overwrought because his work didn't go the way that he wanted, and then he fell back into the use of drugs, and one yin stirs all yins. And eventually, of course, yin consumes the yang up, and it really becomes a life-threatening thing. And in this case, it was his life. But it could also be the lives of other people. Think of alcoholics and abuse. So by establishing a sort of firewall, a policy, and then moving forward, we can deter the lines of energy, the lines of force, away from our king and from the center. It is also good in chess, if you're playing this style and not playing queen's mate, it is good to keep the queen next to the king as long as possible, and also to keep the rooks handy and available. And in fact, it is best if your king waits in the center and never has to castle one way or the other, but you can definitely can castle both directions. This is a sign of ultimate power, peace, and centrality. And it means that actually, by now, the energy, the shur, will have extended and penetrate through the opponent, and they will feel dismayed inside. Remember now, they're a good person. They're just playing chess with you. But if we were treating this same idea as to how to deal with the incursions from life, then our opponent is, of course, evil itself. And that's why it is important to understand the laws of energy and the laws of movement. The arrangement of the pieces on the board is really a relatively simple matter. Most people struggle with it because they do not understand some basic rules of power. Pardon me. So let's talk about a couple of rules of power. One is that if you do not have power, don't pretend to unless it's a matter of defending yourself, because then when you're weak, pretend to be strong. But if you're not defending yourself, don't delude yourself that you have a lot of power when you don't have any power. Be honest, brutally honest with yourself as to what you can and can't achieve in your current status of life. Number two, power can be gained, but it's more easily lost. So be very careful. Once you spend a lot of time gathering power, remember that it took a lot of energy to gather that power. For example, breathing perhaps. Or for example, studying for exams and then getting your degree. So then don't be wasteful of that and be reckless and for the sake of your principles, throw away a career that and get locked out of a community that you fought hard to earn your way into and to gain a reputation with.
In half a mile, turn right onto Jackson Pike.
So we have only a half mile. Another rule of power would be that power, of course, has to be earned or taken. It cannot be given away. Although I can certainly give trust to my son, it doesn't really give him power. I can give him authority, for example, to watch his brother or sister. However, that doesn't
turn right onto Jackson Pike.
That doesn't mean that I'm giving him necessarily power. I'm only extending my power and authority through him over the siblings. However, that is not true power because it has just been borrowed from the previous holder of the power. Power also has to be exercised, just like any muscle. If you don't exercise power, if you don't exercise muscle, it will break down, it will start to fade away. And so you have to also practice, and practice is one of the hardest things. If you're feeling low on energy, it's totally understandable if you don't have the energy or even the mind space to go and do cardiovascular exercise to make your physical body strong. But you don't have to be physically strong to have power. The mind is the greatest weapon, and so you can extend your ability to have power by study and receiving fire. Remember that we talked about fire through knowledge and wisdom and achieving the gnosis. If you can achieve the gnosis, then you can have a form of power. Now, it may be kind of a false power in that if people feel like overthrowing you, they may just push you over because you're thin and frail or airy. Perhaps you're an airy element and nobody believes in you. And if you feel that way, I am sorry to hear that. But remember what I talk about the most on my site is duh. Duh is the secret, right? This kind of power, this is scary power, right? It scares even the politically minded with lots of money. Jesus scared the heck out of the rabbi establishment merely by talking, but also his presence, his glow. That kind of power made them tremble inside because his logic and reasoning was far more sound than theirs. And he brought with him the new religion, which was actually the old religion. It's just that they had forgotten it. And so, in having that kind of power and strength, what made him a threat. So this brings us to another point. If you're not planning to be a prophet or a guru, or a Martin Luther King or something like that, then take care, because in your life you probably don't have armed security to arm yourself and study self-defense and other means of having power. You don't have to be able to kick as hard as this horse over here to be decently strong and be able to protect yourself from the world. However, you do need to be capable of protecting yourself. Let's say that you're a woman who is just starting to obtain your inner power, and now your abusive, semi-abusive, maybe verbally abusive spouse, husband is sort of repressing you, or maybe your family. I've had some women, it's their whole family repress them. And so you need to be able to physically defend yourself from any kind of incursions, people laying their hands on you, etc. And if you don't know that, then you need to study the secrets of Tai Chi, because Tai Chi was specifically meant for thinner framed individuals to be able to attain equal power to the average fighter, the average male fighter. Obviously, you will not attain, prize fighter strength with some Tai Chi. You're going to have to actually fight like a prize fighter if you want that. But you can attain at least decent self-protection. Sometimes if somebody grabs you and you just quickly flip, and then they don't understand it, and you're on top with the hands and they're not, that energy shockwave that goes through them could be enough to turn. Could also anger them. So it's all about how you do it. At any rate, those are some of the rules of power. I want you to think about where your power is. What is your power level? Is it over 9,000? A little Dragon Ball joke. Today's yesterday was the release, but today, for people wanting to watch the subs, the last Dragon Ball Super episode. So, go and enjoy that if you haven't seen Dragon Ball Super. And I will see you next time. Please like, share, subscribe. Please give this message and the fire one that I uploaded yesterday, which was recorded in the week, out to somebody who's struggling, who wants to transform, who wants to change. And, be helpful to other people in the world. Help to empower them. And if you're a kid, start thinking about what your power is currently and where your talents lie, because your God-given talents are the source of your first set of powers that you can possibly have when you don't have any authority, because adults have all the authority. And I will see you all next time.